Well, I bet some of you may have been wondering when I was ever going to get around to reviewing this series, but I just had to sit on it for a few months. But now that those few months have passed by, I officially feel comfortable talking about this series. Hey everyone, it's Alexander, the real Mr. Robinson. Welcome to the channel, and this is my review for Season 1 of Godzilla Singular Point. At least, the ending of this season implies that there will be a second one. A second season hasn't been announced by the time I'm recording this review, but we'll see what happens. The plot to this series is actually a little complicated if you're not too familiar with the tropes of anime, so I'll break it down as simply as I can. Your two main characters are an engineer who owns a shop called Otaki Factory, and he and his friends run that shop, and they have their own giant robot. Bet you can guess who that is if you're a longtime Godzilla fan. And then you also have a grad student who is studying imaginary creatures. I guess I should say that loosely because there's a signal that starts popping up in the form of a song that brings these two characters together, and then all of a sudden giant monsters start popping up throughout Japan, throughout the world even, with some of them having a harder time adapting to living on Earth, but one of them has no problem at all adapting, and that is the king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. So in a way, I kind of feel bad that it's taken me this long to review this series, because if you know me, I'm a big Godzilla nut. I think the entirety of Godzilla as a franchise might be my favorite film franchise of all time, above the Marvel Cinematic Universe and above Star Wars. And this right here, Godzilla Singular Point, is a big deal for the franchise because up until this, there's never been an anime TV show about Godzilla. And sure, there have been American Godzilla TV shows like the Hanna-Barbera Godzilla series, and then of course there's Godzilla the series, which might be connected to the single worst thing to come out of the Godzilla franchise, but it's a good show, all things considered. And then I don't know what the hell this is right here. I guess it's more oriented towards toddlers to get them into Godzilla, but it's just something that doesn't look like it appeals to me. So this is the first time an anime series for TV has been made in the Godzilla franchise and taken as seriously as it could be. And there's actually quite a lot that I like about this show. For one, the animation looks just like what I'd expect from an anime Godzilla series, and not that awkward 3D animation that we got in the anime trilogy. It's bright, it's colorful, all the character designs are great, and even though all the monsters are brought to life via CG, they blend really well with all the 2D animation, and it's just a beautiful show to look at. Most of the show is bright and colorful, but sometimes when it gets really dark, it looks just as beautiful as those colorful sequences. I think the characters are actually quite charming and very quirky. Your two main characters, the engineer and the grad student, work well together even though they aren't on screen together throughout most of the series, and I like their characteristics overall. I didn't watch this in Japanese because based on my experience with the anime trilogy, I figured that there was going to be a lot of explaining, and I was right, but the dub work is actually fantastic. Not only is the voice cast for the dub version really good, and they give a lot of these characters tons of personality, but it was also just a lot easier to keep track of considering that there is so much exposition in this show. Not as boring as in the anime trilogy. In fact, there's a lot of ways that they cleverly explain what's going on in this series, but I think it helps better to watch it dubbed than subtitled. And then the monsters themselves are really cool as well. They're all brought to life through CGI, and you'll recognize a handful of classics from the Showa era. Obviously, you've got monsters like Rodan and Anguirus. They are two of Godzilla's most popular allies, and it's really cool to see these redesigns. They're not too drastic from what we're familiar with, especially with Anguirus, but with Rodan, I like how there's two subspecies of Rodan. There's a red Rodan that looks like it's a pteranodon, and then there's a brownish Rodan that looks like a Quetzalcoatlus. And I think it's really clever to have the Rodans be as small as they are, because it leads to some very creative action scenes, especially when you bring in this guy right here, Jet Jaguar. Not counting any of the video games, this marks the first time that we've seen Jet Jaguar in the Godzilla series since 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon. And while this version of Jet Jaguar might not be as goofy or as over the top as the 70s version was, he still is probably the biggest highlight when it comes to the monsters, well, except for Godzilla himself, but he's also a flat-out badass. There's a lot of great action involving Jet Jaguar, especially when he's fighting monsters that are a cross between Kumonga and Hedorah. There's some original monsters. One of them looks like Gabra, but is not. And to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that monster was doing in this series. And you also have Manda in there as well, and much like with Rodan, there's a lot of them. And then you have what I thought were Titanosaurus and Varan, but it turns out that these are earlier forms of this interpretation of Godzilla. And I really got confused when this creature showed up and they started playing the Ifukube Godzilla theme, because I thought, wait a minute, why are they playing Godzilla's theme for Titanosaurus? So I guess in hindsight that was a clue that this is an earlier version of this Godzilla, and this Godzilla right here is actually pretty cool. In a way, this series borrows as much from Shin Godzilla as much as it does from the Showa era, except I think Shin Godzilla might be a little more accessible to the general public, because I'm going to tell you right now, throughout a lot of the series, I didn't know what was going on, and that's not really the series' fault. I may love Godzilla, but I have said on a number of occasions that I don't watch anime, and watching this series, I really got a full grasp of why I just don't watch anime. And it's not that I dislike anime, it's that sometimes it can be really hard to keep track of in terms of its plot, because anime can be geared specifically towards a certain crowd that understands these tropes, and those that watch anime constantly will have a better grasp on what's actually going on. In fact, one of the reasons why it took me so long to watch the show is because I was waiting for a friend of mine at work to watch the show himself, because he's one of the few people that I know that might rival me in terms of being a Godzilla nerd, but he also has the advantage of being a huge anime fan. So I waited for him to watch the series so he could kind of simplify it for me. That way I felt more comfortable at the end of the day doing this review. And once you get a grasp on what's actually going on with this story, it's kind of cool, and it leads to probably one of the most creative Godzilla projects out there. So I'm going to wrap things up right here. For being the very first Godzilla anime TV show, it's very impressive. It's got some really creative ideas, the characters are charming as hell, the monster scenes are very well done, the action just kicks all kinds of ass. And even though the story is kind of confusing to follow, even if you watch the dubbed version, once you get the hang of what's actually going on, it's pretty cool. And the way this season ends with a tease of Mechagodzilla, who actually does look like Mechagodzilla from the 70s, so if you were worried about a repeat of the anime trilogy Mechagodzilla, you don't have to worry. I'm curious to what they're going to do with another season. So I'm going to give this season 2 ratings. I normally don't like to do this, but I feel like that this show should be rated with a caveat for those that don't watch a whole lot of anime, like me. If you're a huge fan of anime and you watch it religiously and get all the tropes, then I think this is worth seeing in your lifetime. This is as perfect of a Godzilla anime as you could get. But if you're not too familiar with the tropes of anime, but you still like Godzilla, then I'd say it's good, but it's not great. You really do have to be paying attention to the exposition and what exactly is going on. And I feel like this is a show that might appeal more to anime fans than to actual Godzilla fans, because it can be very difficult to follow. And if you're more of a mainstream Godzilla fan, I'd say stick with the MonsterVerse. Hell, I'd say Shin Godzilla is more accessible. Yes, it is very much catered to a Japanese audience because it deals with Japanese politics, but it kind of deals with it in a real-world scenario. I mean, as real world as you could get with Godzilla, whereas Godzilla Singular Point has more of an edge towards science fiction fantasy. That's not me criticizing the show at all. I'm just saying that you have to go in knowing that this is an anime and there are certain anime tropes that it abides by. So still really good at the end of the day. And there you go. That's my review for the first season of Godzilla Singular Point. I want to thank you for your patience. I know some of you have been waiting so long for me to review this show, but I really had to sit on it before I felt comfortable talking about it. So now I want to know what you guys think about Godzilla Singular Point. If you've seen it, what did you think? If you've seen this show, which angle are you coming at this from? As a Godzilla fan, an anime fan, or just a casual viewer altogether? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one. Hello everyone, I just want to say thank you all for watching my review for Season 1 of Godzilla Singular Point. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, go check out my Twitch channel, and support me on Patreon. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.